Welcome to Old Iron Machine Works. In this video, we will be taking this 1977 Sanger and getting it back in the water after 25 years. So hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy the video. Here I'm showing bringing the boat home, or should I say attempting to bring it home from Stockton, California to my home in Rio Vista. And it was sitting in a guy's backyard with flat tires, and we kind of thought maybe the tires would air up and make it. Well, here I'm at the right rear tire, which was leaking pretty fast. Putting some slime in it, airing it up, hoping that it would make the 20 plus mile trip home. And unfortunately, that tire held, but this tire did not. Anyway, at that point, it was pretty late at night. I had to call Jack to bring me a couple of spare tires to put on and to actually make it home. Well, being that the original wheels were all rusted up, I needed to find some other wheels, and my boss had 4 of these center lines off of his GTO. So here I mocked it up just to see if it was going to work, and actually everything was pretty good except the rim was about an inch too wide and the tires were rubbing the inside. So here I am going to lay them out, machine an inch off, and then TIG weld them back up. I do not have any footage of the welding process. I actually welded up at work, and I did not have my phone with me, and I wasn't in the total mode of doing YouTube videos. So don't be disappointed when you see it go from machining to on the trailer. Growing up in Rio Vista, I spent a lot of time on the water and sold my last boat years ago and never thought I'd really get back into a boat. And when Adley and Jack bought a piece of property right on the river with a beautiful dock, that kind of changed my mind a little bit. And I thought, well, what would be fun other than like a jet ski or something? So I started looking on Marketplace and found a gentleman that had this 77 Sanger, and he bought it in 2017 from the son of the original owner. And up till 2017, it was always kept inside. And from 2017 after, it's been tarped in the seller's backyard. Here I put the bat in the spindle of the lathe, thinking that I was going to use it to catch one half of the wheel, and I decided that I didn't want to risk having the wheel part off and flip around and mess it up or whatever. So I decided to just machine most of it, just to leave a little bit of material to hold them together, and then just part them off with the zip saw or zip wheel. The section where the X is what gets machined off. And it's right at 1 inch when its material comes off of it. Here you can see the bevel I machined in it, and then I left just a small little like 1/8 inch lip to do all the centering. So when they center up, you just got the little V in there to that'll the TIG welded up real nice. Here's some junk axles off of a project that I did a couple years back, and I needed to pull the one hub off and then clean it up and use it for machining the wheel. And you'll see that will go into the lathe. Here you can see the 1 inch I got to remove, and by being able to bolt the rim right up to the hub allows me to machine off that 1 inch material. Working on this video, I really wished I would have had footage of TIG welding them up, but it is what it is. But I basically took a couple large hose clamps, connected them, and then when I set one half of the wheel on the other, I ran the hose clamp around it to keep it centered, and then a strap around it to keep them sucked tight to each other, and used a welding positioner and just TIG welded both sides. I also wanted to go slightly taller on the tire size, so I pulled out the original equalizers, and from the same project I did a couple years back, some axles I bought came with these drop equalizers, and what it allowed me to do is bolt them in and raise the trailer up, or should I say the fenders away from the axles, just enough to give me a little more clearance. I did go with a pretty nice tire, and they are tubeless. So if there is any kind of failure down the road or something going on, I'd sure like to think that the rim's gonna have a leak before anything else. So now that I got the boat where I can move it, it's time to tackle the fuel system, starting with that fuel filter that's built right in the bottom of the pump. And then that bottom canister was totally rotted out. So I put a whole new canister with a spin-on fuel filter in same location. And then it's time to tackle the carburetor. Now, believe it or not, the seller told me that he rebuilt the Holly. It's a Holly 800 double pumper. And he said that he went through and rebuilt it a while back. And as you can see, I should have asked exactly how far back. It was not on the boat. It was sitting in the boat and clearly got plenty of moisture. I did not want to mess around with it. I like Hollies, but to me, I wanted to just see if I could find something. So I went online to eBay and actually found the same vintage 800 double pumper that looked great on the pictures. And when it came in, I was very happy with the way it looked. So when I did buy this boat and was negotiating with the seller, it was on a rainy day, and I told him that I was taking some risk on it, and he was very, very motivated. He wanted it gone. and we ended up making a deal. And I actually gave him a little less than half of what he was asking. So I thought, even if I have to rebuild the complete motor, I already knew I needed to eventually do upholstery because it's all original upholstery. I thought I would still be okay. When inspecting the new carburetor, I could see where it was missing a couple bolts, right where the arrow is. There was two screws that were missing, and I just pulled them out of the other carburetor. They just helped make a better seal to the bottom gasket. Here I'm filling up my temporary fuel tank. You probably recognize the tanks. They're used in like syrups and stuff in the fountain industry, like soda machines. But the tanks are good for well over 100 psi. So once you fill it up, you put air into that port, and that just has a tube going down at the bottom, and that's where the on this particular application the gas will come out. I use it for pressurizing engines also, where I'll just pump oil into the engine on a rebuild. But they're very handy. They work good. Here I'm doing a little test run, and I think I probably should have had a little bigger reservoir than a Gatorade bottle. Here I'm pulling the fuel level fuel bowl screws out, and generally uh, I'll set these where fuel is just at the bottom of the hole. And the reason why I like to pressure up the carburetor and not have it running is to check to make sure that the float valves are sealing. And I did pull the ones out of the other carburetor that the gentleman said he rebuilt, and they did look really nice shape. So I wanted to just start out with putting them in, and they're just made to where you have a little hex nut that floats on the stem, and then it just moves the whole valve up and down to adjust your level. And then when you tighten the top screw, that locks everything in place. Now the Hollies pretty much just have the fuel valves, power valves, some jets, gaskets. So I was hoping I did not have to rebuild the whole carburetor. I was prepared to do it, but I thought I would try it out first and see how it ran. And I ended up lucking out, and carburetor worked perfect. So here I got 10 psi of fuel to the carburetor, and the float valves are sealing off just great. You'll see when I tilt the carburetor, fuel will kind of splash out. That's about the level where I like to keep them. All right, the next clip is going to show the very first startup after many years. Well, here's the first time it's been in the water in 25 years. So here we got Jack at the boat, and then we got Adelie out in the water on the jet ski. She'll be our backup if we need to get towed back to the dock.
It is still dirty, but this is the first time it's been in the water since 1999. Hey, Jack.
It's fun, Gary.
Well, it floats. And
Well, here we're working our way back to the dock. I noticed the temperature gauge was starting to go up a little bit on the temperature. So I started feeling around on the exhaust manifolds, and one of them is getting quite hot, and they should not get hot, being water cooled. The engine gets its cooling from the Berkeley pump. It basically pumps water up to the engine. At first, it goes through the exhaust manifolds, then back into the engine, then back out that hose, and then out the exhaust. I also noticed it did not have any exhaust gaskets.
Well, I found the problem why this manifold was getting so hot. It has an inlet line that goes into the manifold, and then it comes out and goes over to this port here and then through the engine. Well, this fitting is blocked, plugged about as tight as you can get. So get that freed up. The other side was running great, so no reason to go any farther. I had to pull these bolts out in order to get this out. I'm glad I found that.
I wanted to point out that fitting was hard buildups over time, so I think that the previous owners had problems with it years ago. I noticed when I pulled a couple spark plugs out to check compression, I had some water in the cylinders. That's when I found that. That's not good. A little bit of water in the cylinder does a pretty good job of cleaning the carbon off of the spark plugs.
Well, the problem is in here. It's leaking water into the cylinders. A couple cylinders were definitely lots of water in them. I separated the manifold, turned the water garden hose back on, ran it on 6 cylinders just to kind of blow and dry things out, and had great compression on everything, no other signs of water. So I either have a crack in here, or that gasket right there has a passage that lets water in. So I'm gonna head into the shop right now. I'll take it apart and cross my fingers.
So I got it set up opposite as what you would see with it on the engine. I got all the exhaust ports filled up with water, and I'm going to put air into the water ports. And if there's a leak, you'll see bubbles. Now, the one plug fitting I showed you earlier that was causing this manifold to get hot, I think caused this gas to get compromised. And I just think it finally cooked and started leaking. But after I got it all cleaned off, the surfaces where the gasket seals weren't that great. So I went ahead and took them to the mill, did some kind of fancy clamping to the table, and just cleaned up the surfaces to seal the gasket better. So I had to be a little bit creative on clamping this manifold down. But one thing about the mill and aluminum, the lighter cuts you make, the less clamping forces you have to hold it down. This is one of the bridge ports I use at work, and as you can see, I don't have it properly leveled like I probably should. But as long as the area I want to machine is squared to the table, we're all good. I don't mind tooling marks on aluminum. When it gets down to it, there'll be some silver on the gasket, and the machine marks kind of help lock into the gasket, keeps from wanting to squish the gasket away. Normally that sander would be one of my go-tos for cleaning up certain surfaces, but unfortunately there was a little bad area on this manifold, so it clamped up much better to the table. But you'll see in the machining there's one area that looked like it got hit or something in the past, right there. So I'll go ahead and machine and clean it up. Here you can see the first pass didn't quite clean it up. The little dent's still there, so it'll take another pass to clean that up. Here, making a couple new gaskets, and just for a tip for any of you out there, before you go to hammer on your hole punch, make sure your backing plates up underneath. And I got some new studs made and ready to put it together. Once the snell was bolted onto the manifold, I pressured everything up again and no leaks. Here, going out for our second test drive, and I got a couple of my grandkids with me. Here I got my daughter Adelie learning how to maneuver a jet boat under power. No, this was not Adelie's doing, but the first time it has to get towed back to the dock. But we're actually towing it to Adelie and Jack's dock.
Dry dock.
So here I'm sucking fuel off the fuel system, trying to figure out what exactly was going on. And what I ended up finding, I actually ran out on one tank, and when I went to switch it, that's when I had problems. And what I ended up finding out is the selector valve in the back that switches from right tank, left tank, actually broke, where the main valve portion of it disconnected from the stem. So when you were working the lever, it was not shifting. Kind of hard to hold the phone with one hand and work the valve with the other, but you can kind of see when you turn the handle, it doesn't turn the inside valve. So I ended up rebuilding it. I had to do some modifications, but I wanted to keep the original one in there. So here I got the valve apart. I had to drill that hole in order to get the cone piece to the right of it out. And then it'll just be tapped 1/8 inch pipe and a plug put in it. So what I'll do, you can see where that's kind of broke up a little bit. And the stem, there's enough pocket there where the stem will still fit. That washer was part of a detent, where it would detent one tank to the other. That'll be eliminated. And I decided to just connect those two. So I'll just drill a hole through the brass stem and put a screw washer. So this hole here is going through the brass and it's drilling through that steel pin. So you can see my tap's not wanting to really go in there very well, and it's nice and straight. So I'm just kind of hoping that I just get some threads in there without breaking the darn tap off. And it ended up tapping okay. Here, just popping a hole through the end of it where I can have a washer inside there, and then a little small little Allen bolt. So here it's all connected again, and the only difference that I'll be doing is instead of the detent washer, which is right there, it'll have just a regular smooth washer and a spring, and then on the handle there's a pointer. So now there's just two lines, so when I switch from tank to tank, I just got to make sure I line them up. So here I got a couple granddaughters and a nephew, and they absolutely had a ball getting pulled around in the tube. Here I got my son Tim on the tube, so I can be a little bit more aggressive. So here's my son Tim on the stand-up board. He was nice and dry a little bit ago, but me and my grandson out there in the jet ski kind of challenged him a little bit ago. There he looks a little bit nervous that round two's coming. Here it's time for everybody to unwind. Here we have a storm that's coming through, and we got a massive log in the water that's kind of beating and bouncing up against the dock. So we got Jack and Jack's dad and myself out there, gonna try to fight it and get it up against the shore. So I found this carport for sale on Marketplace. It was up in Northern California, and thought it would be great for the boat.
Trying to get ready to pour concrete today.
Here, got the concrete poured. I had my son-in-law Jack come and give me a hand with it. Right here, putting the framework up. And on the left-hand side, a few years back, I put in these 3,000-pound blocks for a retainer wall, and carport will bolt right down to it. And it'll definitely give the boat better protection than just trying to put a tarp on it in the backyard.
No, that way, towards the dock. That way. That way, towards the dock. No, that way, towards the dock. You are one crazy jet boat driver. You know that?